am Frankie, 28 years old. Until last Christmas, I lived with my dad after losing my tech job. I spent weeks preparing for that holiday dinner, hoping to create warmth in a house that felt increasingly cold. The turkey was perfect, the decorations festive, but none of that mattered when my father looked me straight in the eyes between bites of mashed potatoes and said the words that changed everything. "You are a leech. You cannot stay here anymore." If you are watching this during your own family drama, hit like and subscribe. Let me know where you are watching from, and stay tuned to see how I turned this holiday nightmare into the best decision of my life. 6 months before that fateful Christmas dinner, I lost my job at a mid-sized tech company. The economy had taken a downturn, and our entire department was eliminated in what management called a strategic restructuring. 20 people, myself included, were suddenly unemployed in an increasingly competitive job market. With 3 months of severance pay and growing anxiety about the future, I made the difficult decision to move back home with my dad. At 28, returning to my childhood bedroom felt like a personal failure. The posters I had once loved as a teenager were long gone, replaced by neutral paint and a guest room aesthetic, but the weight of adolescent insecurities came rushing back the moment I unpacked my suitcase. My father had agreed to the arrangement with clear reluctance, making it obvious this was temporary and that I needed to find work quickly. My mom passed away when I was 15. Cancer took her within 8 months of diagnosis, leaving my dad to raise a teenage daughter and her younger sister alone. He did the best he could, working long hours as an accountant to provide for us financially, but emotional support was never his strong suit. Grief hardened something in him, and praise became rare while criticism flowed freely. From the beginning of my unemployment, Dad seemed to take my job loss as a personal affront, as if my layoff somehow reflected poorly on him. Each morning at breakfast, he would ask if I had found work yet, his tone suggesting I was not trying hard enough. He did not understand that the job market had changed dramatically since he last looked for work 30 years ago. Despite his perception, I was far from lazy. Every day I spent hours submitting applications, tailoring my resume, and writing personalized cover letters. In the first month alone, I applied to more than 70 positions. By the time Christmas approached, that number had grown to over 200 applications. I had numerous phone screenings and several promising interviews, but competition was fierce. Positions that would have attracted 50 applicants a few years ago now drew hundreds. While searching for full-time employment, I began picking up freelance graphic design work. It started small, a logo for a friend of a friend, a website redesign for a local bakery. The pay was inconsistent and much lower than my previous salary, but it gave me some income and kept my skills sharp. My father, however, dismissed this work entirely. Real jobs came with benefits and regular paychecks, he said. Everything else was just a hobby. What Dad failed to see, or perhaps chose not to acknowledge, was how much I contributed to the household. I took over all the cooking, cleaning, and home maintenance. I fixed the leaking bathroom faucet, repainted the peeling deck, and kept the yard immaculate. Beyond housework, I used my dwindling savings to cover groceries and utilities without complaint. The internet bill, the Netflix subscription, the cell phone family plan, all quietly paid from my account each month. As Christmas approached, my sister Sarah and her husband Tom announced they would join us for the holiday. Sarah was 2 years younger than me, but light years ahead in our father's estimation. She had a stable job as a nurse, a husband with a promising career in finance, and a beautiful home in the suburbs. They were the golden children making all the right choices, while I had become the cautionary tale. I was determined to make Christmas special despite the underlying tension. Perhaps a perfect holiday would somehow soften my father's growing resentment. I spent days planning the menu, incorporating all his favorites: cornbread stuffing made from my grandmother's recipe, sweet potato casserole with the perfect ratio of marshmallows to pecans, and homemade rolls that required 3 separate rises. I decorated the house with the family ornaments Mom had collected over the years, carefully hanging each one with memories of happier times. The week before Christmas, I splurged on ingredients using the payment from a last-minute design job. Money was tight, but I justified the expense as an investment in family harmony. I even bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, spending hours comparing prices online to find the perfect presents without breaking my budget. For Dad, I found a rare first edition of his favorite mystery author at a used bookstore and had it professionally cleaned and preserved. The night before Christmas Eve, I stayed up until 2 in the morning wrapping presents, baking pies, and prepping ingredients. As I finally crawled into bed, exhausted but satisfied with my preparations, I allowed myself to hope that this holiday might mark a turning point in my relationship with my father. Maybe, just maybe, he would finally see how hard I was trying. When Sarah and Tom arrived on Christmas Eve, they brought expensive wine and store-bought desserts. Dad embraced them with genuine warmth, asking about their jobs, their friends, their future plans. I watched from the kitchen as I put the finishing touches on dinner, feeling the familiar pang of being the less favored child. Still, I plastered on a smile and carried the food to the beautifully set table, determined to create the perfect Christmas despite the knot in my stomach. Little did I know that within 24 hours, I would be packing my belongings and walking away from my childhood home for the final time. Christmas Day arrived with deceptive perfection. Snow fell gently outside the windows, creating the quintessential holiday scene. The house smelled of cinnamon, pine, and roasting turkey. I woke early to start cooking, wearing the festive apron Mom had sewn years ago, trying to channel her warmth and patience into my preparations. By 4 in the afternoon, everything was ready. The dining room table gleamed with the good china that only came out for special occasions, candles flickered in the centerpiece I had crafted from pine boughs and cranberries. The turkey was golden brown, resting under foil while I finished the gravy. Dad, Sarah, and Tom gathered in the living room, sipping eggnog and exchanging small talk while Christmas music played softly in the background. When I called everyone to dinner, there was a moment, brief but beautiful, when it all felt right. Dad actually smiled as he surveyed the spread, and I felt a flicker of pride. We took our seats, passed the serving dishes, and began to eat. The conversation flowed easily at first, focused on compliments about the food and memories of past Christmases. Then Sarah mentioned her recent promotion at the hospital. She had been appointed head nurse of the pediatric unit, a significant achievement that came with a substantial raise. Tom chimed in with news of his own success, a transfer to a more prestigious department that put him on track for partnership within 5 years. Dad beamed at them both, raising his glass in a toast to their bright futures. I was genuinely happy for my sister and brother-in-law. They worked hard and deserved their success, but as Dad lavished praise on them, the contrast to his treatment of me became painfully obvious. Under the table, I twisted my napkin into a tight knot, forcing myself to maintain a pleasant expression. The conversation inevitably turned to me. Dad cleared his throat and asked in that particular tone I had come to dread, and for Tom's benefit as well. "So, Frankie, any progress on the job front?" I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I carefully set down my fork. "I have been doing some consistent freelance work," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "Actually, I just finished a big project for a startup that might turn into a regular contract." They really liked my design approach. Dad scoffed, cutting a piece of turkey with unnecessary force. "Freelance. That is not a real career. You need stability, benefits, a retirement plan. When I was your age, I already had a house and was supporting a family." The familiar frustration bubbled up inside me. "The job market is different now, Dad. Entry-level positions require 5 years of experience. Companies want to hire contractors so they do not have to provide benefits. I am competing with hundreds of qualified applicants for every opening." "Excuses," he muttered. "You are not trying hard enough." Sarah never had trouble finding work. Sarah worked through her discomfort by taking a large sip of wine. Tom suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. I felt my cheeks burning but pressed on. "I have submitted over 200 applications in 6 months. I have had 15 interviews. I am networking, taking online courses to add skills to my resume, and building my portfolio with freelance work. What else would you suggest I do?" Dad set down his knife and fork with deliberate slowness. "What I would suggest is that you stop living off my charity. Do you have any idea what it costs to support another adult? The groceries, the utilities, the extra water usage." I blinked in surprise. "I buy most of the groceries," I said quietly. "And I pay for the internet, the streaming services, and our phone plan." He waved his hand dismissively. "A drop in the bucket compared to housing costs. Property taxes alone are $3,000 a year." The conversation was spiraling, but I could not seem to stop it. "I contribute what I can," I said. "I also cook, clean, and maintain the house. Just last month, I fixed the deck that had been rotting for years." A flash of anger crossed his face. "So now you want payment for basic chores? This is exactly the problem with your generation. You expect rewards for the bare minimum." Sarah attempted to intervene. "Dad, Frankie really has been helping around the house. The place looks better than it has in years." But Dad was on a roll now, his frustration spilling out in front of our holiday guests. "You know what? I have been patient. I have given you 6 months to get back on your feet. But I cannot support you indefinitely while you play at being a designer on the internet." "Dad, please," I said, acutely aware of Tom and Sarah witnessing my humiliation. "I am trying my best." He slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes jump. "Your best is not good enough. You are 28 years old and living in your father's house like a teenager. You are a leech, you cannot stay here anymore after the November bills are paid." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Sarah gasped. Tom stared intently at his plate, and I sat frozen, the taste of turkey turning to ash in my mouth. "You do not mean that," Sarah finally said into the silence. "I absolutely do," Dad replied, his voice calmer now but no less cutting. "It is time Frankie faced reality." I looked at my father's face, searching for any sign of the dad who had taught me to ride a bike, who had awkwardly braided my hair for school pictures after Mom died, who had cried at my college graduation. Instead, I saw only cold determination. Without a word, I placed my napkin beside my plate, stood up, and walked upstairs to my room. Behind me, I heard Sarah hissing at Dad and Tom's uncomfortable attempts to change the subject. But all I could focus on was the roaring in my ears and the singular thought crystallizing in my mind. I needed to leave, not just eventually, but now. I closed my bedroom door behind me and leaned against it, sliding down until I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest. The tears came silently at first, then in heaving sobs that I muffled with my sleeve. Leech. The word reverberated in my head, each echo driving deeper like a nail. This was not the first time Dad had made me feel worthless, but it was the most public and direct attack yet. As I sat there, memories flooded back, bringing home straight-A report cards, only to have him ask about the 1B+. Winning second place in an art competition, and hearing only that first place went to someone else, graduating college with honors, while he complained about the job market and my chosen field. Nothing I did was ever enough. But until today, I had convinced myself that deep down, Dad was proud of me. That beneath his gruff exterior was a father who truly wanted the best for his daughter. The scales finally fell from my eyes. The truth was simpler and harder: Dad did not respect me, my choices, or my efforts, and he never would. Wiping my tears, I pulled out my phone and texted my best friend, Lisa. "Need a huge favor. Can I crash at your place tonight? Emergency." Her response came immediately. "Of course. Everything okay? I will explain when I see you," I wrote back. Then I stood up and looked around the room, mentally cataloging what I needed to take and what could be left behind. If Dad wanted me gone after the November bills were paid, I would do him one better. I would be gone before morning. But first, I needed a plan. I pulled out a notebook and began to list everything I needed to arrange: somewhere to live, moving my belongings, finances, and the logistics of separating my life from this house. The act of planning calmed me, giving me purpose. Beyond the hurt and anger, for housing, Lisa's couch would work temporarily, but I needed my own place quickly. I opened my laptop and began searching rental listings, focusing on studio apartments and rooms for rent. My budget was tight, but my freelance income plus what remained of my savings could cover modest rent if I was careful. After an hour of searching, I found a promising lead: a small studio apartment in an older building across town. The rent was within my budget, utilities included, and it was available immediately due to a tenant breaking their lease. I sent an inquiry email explaining my situation and offering to view the apartment first thing in the morning. Next came the financial assessment. I opened my banking app and reviewed my accounts. $6,200 in savings. Not much, but enough for a security deposit, first month's rent, and moving expenses if I was frugal. My freelance work had been picking up with 2 regular clients, now providing consistent, if modest, income. It would be tight, but I could make it work. Then I turned to the household accounts. Over the past 6 months, I had taken on responsibility for several bills to contribute to the household. I opened my email and began pulling up account information: internet service in my name and paid from my account. Streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, all in my name. The family cell phone plan had been transferred to my name after Dad forgot to pay it 3 months in a row. Even the electric bill had been coming from my account since September. As I reviewed these expenses, a realization dawned. Dad's accusation of me being a leech was not just hurtful, it was completely inaccurate. I had been financially supporting more of the household than either of us had acknowledged. If I simply took what was rightfully mine, the services I paid for, the impact on his comfortable life would be immediate and significant. I did not want revenge, but I did want recognition. And maybe, just maybe, the absence of these conveniences would make my contributions visible in a way my presence never had. Methodically, I began the process of transferring or canceling services. The internet service could be transferred to my new address as soon as I had one confirmed. The streaming accounts were easy: just change the password and remove the extra profiles. The cell phone plan required more thought. I could remove Dad from my family plan, but that seemed unnecessarily harsh. Instead, I decided to transfer his line to a separate account under his name, effective immediately. He would need to set up payment, but his service would not be interrupted. The electric bill was trickier, since it was a vital service. I called the utility company and explained that I would no longer be responsible for the account after the Current billing cycle. They would need to contact the homeowner directly for future payments. With each call and email, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and empowerment. I was not doing anything wrong, simply taking responsibility for my own accounts and removing myself from financial obligations to a house where I was no longer welcome. Yet years of seeking Dad's approval made even this reasonable action feel like betrayal. By midnight, my financial disentanglement was well underway. I received a response from the landlord of the studio apartment, offering a viewing at 9 the next morning. Lisa confirmed she would help me move and let me stay as long as needed. A plan was taking shape. I began packing, starting with essentials, clothes, toiletries, important documents, my laptop, and design equipment. As I sorted through my belongings, I realized how little I actually needed. Much of what filled the room were artifacts of a past life, things kept out of sentiment rather than necessity. Working through the night, I filled boxes and bags with everything that mattered. Occasionally, I would pause, listening for sounds from downstairs. After our disastrous dinner, Sarah and Tom had made awkward excuses and left early. Dad had retreated to his study with a glass of whiskey. The house was silent now, everyone licking their wounds in private. By 4 in the morning, I was exhausted but prepared. Most of my belongings were packed, arrangements were in place, and I had even drafted a brief note to leave behind. I am not a leech. I am your daughter. But not anymore. As dawn approached, I lay down for a few hours of restless sleep, setting my alarm for 7, early enough to be gone before Dad woke up. As I drifted off, I felt something unexpected beneath the hurt and anger: hope. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was taking control of my life instead of trying to earn approval that would never come. My alarm buzzed at 7 sharp, though I had barely slept. Through the window, I could see the December morning was gray and cold, matching my mood. I listened carefully for any sounds in the house. Nothing. Dad usually slept until 8 on weekends and holidays, giving me a narrow window to execute my plan. I moved quietly, gathering the last of my toiletries from the bathroom and adding them to my packed bags. My car would not hold everything, so I had arranged for Lisa to meet me with her SUV at 8. That gave me an hour to move the first load of belongings and prepare for the final departure. The stairs creaked slightly as I carried the first bags down. I froze, listening for any reaction from Dad's room, but the house remained silent. In the kitchen, I saw the aftermath of our Christmas dinner still evident: dishes I had been too upset to clean last night piled in the sink, leftovers congealing in serving dishes. Under normal circumstances, I would have cleaned up immediately. But these were not normal circumstances. I loaded the first batch of bags into my car, the cold air biting at my face. 3 trips later, my car was full and I still had more to move. At 7:45, I received a text from Lisa. On my way. You okay? Surviving, I texted back. While waiting for Lisa, I wrote out the note I had composed in my head. I placed it on the kitchen counter, weighing it down with the house key I would no longer need. A lump formed in my throat as I looked around the kitchen one last time. Despite everything, this house held memories of my mother, of family dinners before cancer took her, of holidays that had once been joyful. But those memories belonged to a different time, a different family. Lisa arrived right at 8, pulling into the driveway with her headlights off at my request. She emerged from her vehicle, took one look at my face, and wrapped me in a tight hug without saying a word. Did you sleep at all? She asked as we began loading her SUV with the remaining bags and boxes. A couple hours, I replied. I will crash later. Right now, I just need to get out of here. We worked quickly and efficiently, years of friendship making words unnecessary. By 8:20, both vehicles were packed. I did one final sweep of my room, checking drawers and closets for anything forgotten. The space looked strangely impersonal. Now, as if I had never lived there at all. As we prepared to leave, I heard the unmistakable sound of Dad's bedroom door opening. Lisa and I exchanged alarmed glances. Go, I whispered urgently. I will meet you at the apartment. Text me the address again. Lisa hesitated. Are you sure? I nodded. I will be right behind you. As Lisa's SUV pulled away, I hurried to my car. Before I could get in, Dad appeared on the front porch in his bathrobe, hair disheveled from sleep, confusion rapidly transforming to anger on his face. What the hell is going on? He demanded. I am leaving, I said simply, one hand on my car door. You made it clear last night that I am not welcome here. He looked past me at my packed car, the reality of the situation sinking in. I meant after January, he said, his voice losing some of its edge. After the holiday bills are settled. I shook my head. I think it is better this way. Clean break, where are you going to go? He asked, crossing his arms against the cold. You cannot afford rent on your little internet jobs. The dismissive tone reignited my resolve. I have been paying half the bills in this house for months, I said evenly. I think I will manage. His expression faltered slightly. What are you talking about? Check your email, I suggested. I have transferred all the accounts I was paying for. You will need to set up your own payments going forward. What accounts? He asked, genuinely confused. Internet, cell phone, Netflix, electricity, I listed, plus groceries, though I cannot take those back. Dad's face went through a series of expressions, disbelief, then anger, then something that might have been shame before settling back on indignation. You cannot just leave like this, he said. I can, I replied, opening my car door. And I am. Goodbye, Dad. Before he could respond, I got into my car and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing on the porch, looking smaller somehow, as I drove away from my childhood home for what felt like the last time. 20 minutes later, I met Lisa outside the apartment building where I had scheduled a viewing. The landlord, an older man named Frank, showed us the studio apartment that would potentially become my new home. It was small, just 400 square feet, with a kitchenette along one wall, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a main living space that would serve as bedroom, living room, and office. The building was old but clean. The rent was reasonable, and most importantly, it was available immediately. I want it, I told Frank after the brief tour. When can I move in? He looked surprised. Today if you want. Previous tenant left 2 weeks ago and it has been cleaned. Just need first month, security deposit, and to run a credit check. I filled out the application on the spot, provided my credit information, and wrote a check for the required deposits. By 10:30, I had signed a lease and received keys to my new home. Lisa and I spent the next few hours moving my belongings into the tiny apartment. The space filled quickly, making it clear I would need to be selective about what I kept. We made a quick trip to a discount store for essentials, a shower curtain, bathroom supplies, and some basic kitchen items. By late afternoon, exhaustion was overtaking me. Lisa insisted on buying pizza, and we sat on the floor of my new apartment, eating directly from the box. How are you holding up? She asked, concern evident in her voice. I am not sure yet, I admitted. Everything happened so fast. I do not even have a bed. You can stay with me until you get more settled, Lisa offered. I shook my head. No, I need to be here. I need to make this work from day one. As evening fell, Lisa reluctantly left, extracting a promise that I would call if I needed anything. Alone in my new apartment, I inflated an air mattress I had hastily purchased and made it up with sheets and blankets from home. The space was echoey and unfamiliar, the street noises strange after years of suburban quiet. I plugged in my phone to charge and saw multiple missed calls and texts from Dad, Sarah, and even Tom. I was not ready to deal with any of them. Instead, I turned off my phone, curled up on the air mattress, and finally allowed myself to cry until eventually exhaustion pulled me into dreamless sleep. The insistent knocking pulled me from deep sleep. Disoriented, I sat up on the air mattress, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings. The knocking continued, growing more forceful. I checked my phone. 8:12 in the morning. Who could possibly be at my door? When I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped. Dad stood in the hallway, red-faced and clearly agitated. I considered pretending I was not home, but he had obviously seen the light under the door change as I approached. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door but remained firmly in the doorway, blocking entrance to my new space. What are you doing here? I asked. How did you even find me? Lisa's roommate told me, he said accusingly, as if my friend had committed treason. I have been calling you all night. Why the hell did you cut off the internet and the Netflix and transfer my cell phone to a separate account? His indignation was so misplaced that I almost laughed. Those were my accounts, I explained calmly. I paid for them. When I moved out, I took them with me or transferred them to your name. You will need to set up payment information. You cannot just cut services to the house without warning, he shouted, causing a neighbor to peek out their door curiously. Please lower your voice, I said. I did not cut services. I removed myself from financial responsibility for them. There is a difference. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. The internet is down. The Netflix does not work. I had to call the phone company this morning because they said my service would be disconnected if I did not set up payment. I am sorry for the inconvenience, I said, not feeling particularly sorry at all. But surely you can handle setting up accounts in your name. You are an accountant, after all. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. You are acting like a child. No, Dad, I replied. I am acting like an adult who respects herself enough not to stay where she is not wanted. Something in my tone must have finally penetrated his anger. He took a step back, really looking at me and the apartment visible behind me for the first time. This place is tiny, he said. It is what I can afford, I replied simply. A moment of uncomfortable silence stretched between us. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. I did not mean for you to leave like this, he finally said, his voice lower. I just meant you needed to get serious about finding a real job. I have been serious for 6 months, Dad, you just never saw it. He shifted uncomfortably. So, you have been paying for the internet all this time, and the streaming services, and the phone plan since September, and half the electric bill. I confirmed. Why did you not say anything? He asked. I did, multiple times. You were not listening. Another neighbor emerged from their apartment, giving us a curious glance as they headed toward the stairs. Dad seemed to suddenly realize we were having this conversation in a public hallway. Can I come in? He asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was so small that he took in everything at a glance, the air mattress on the floor, boxes still unpacked, my design equipment set up on a folding table that served as a desk. You slept here last night? On that? He asked, gesturing to the air mattress. Yes. He looked around again, his expression unreadable. You cannot live like this, Frankie. I straightened my shoulders. Watch me. Before he could respond, my phone rang. It was Sarah. I answered, putting it on speaker. Frankie. Oh, thank God. Dad said you moved out. What happened? She asked rapidly. Dad called me a leech at Christmas dinner and told me to move out, I replied, looking directly at him. So I did. Dad threw up his hands in frustration. I did not mean immediately. Sarah sighed audibly. Dad, seriously? What were you thinking? She has been living in my house for 6 months without a real job, he defended himself. I had to bite my tongue not to argue again about what constituted a real job. Instead, I said, Sarah, I am fine. I found an apartment. And moved out. End of story. Where are you? She asked. Tom and I can come help you get settled. I appreciate that, but I need some space right now from everyone. I will call you in a few days. After ending the call with Sarah, I turned back to Dad. I think you should go. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead moved toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back. The house is a mess without you. I do not even know where the vacuum is kept. The absurdity of his statement after everything that had happened was too much. Maybe you should hire a leech to clean it for you, I suggested. His face reddened again, but before he could respond, his phone chimed with a text. He checked it and frowned. The electric company says I need to set up a new account, he said accusingly. Yes, you do. I called them yesterday to remove my name from the account. He shook his head in disbelief. You really thought of everything, did not you? I had all night to plan while you slept soundly after ruining Christmas, I pointed out. He had no response to that. With a final look around my tiny apartment, he left, closing the door firmly behind him. I leaned against the wall, emotions swirling. Standing up to Dad had been both terrifying and exhilarating. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary and held it despite his attempts to make me feel guilty. My phone chimed again, a text from Tom, surprisingly. Hey, just checking in. Your dad seems pretty shocked that you actually left. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Let me know if you need anything. The support from my brother-in-law was unexpected but welcome. I sent back a quick thanks and turned to the task of making my new space livable. Throughout the day, the texts and calls continued. Sarah alternated between concern for me and frustration with Dad. She clearly felt caught in the middle, trying to mediate a situation that had years of complicated emotions behind it. Dad called 3 more times. I let the first 2 go to voicemail, where he left increasingly agitated messages about the inconvenience of setting up new accounts and the state of the house without me. I wish you had given me some warning, he complained in the second message. The kitchen is still a disaster from Christmas dinner. When he called a 3rd time, I answered. What do you need, Dad? The house is a mess, he repeated. When are you coming back to clean up? I am not, I said simply. That is not my responsibility anymore. You cannot just leave everything like this, he insisted. I can, actually, and I did. You made it very clear that my contributions to the household were insufficient. So now you get to experience life without those contributions. He was silent for a moment. This is childish, he finally said. No, Dad. This is consequences. I hung up, then turned off my phone again, needing space from the constant communication. By evening, I had arranged my small apartment into something approaching comfortable. The air mattress would need to be replaced with a real bed soon, but for now, it would do. My design equipment was set up and functional, allowing me to continue my freelance work without interruption. A trip to a nearby thrift store had yielded some basic furniture, a second-hand armchair, a small dining table with 2 chairs, and a floor lamp that cast a warm glow over the space. As I sat in my newly acquired armchair eating takeout for dinner, I realized that despite the chaos and emotional turmoil of the past 24 hours, I felt lighter than I had in months. The constant pressure to meet Dad's impossible standards was gone. In this tiny apartment, I answered to no one but myself. The guilt was still there, lurking beneath the surface. Years of conditioning to be the peacekeeper, to smooth over family conflicts, made it difficult to stand firm in my decision. But, with each hour that passed in my new space, my resolve strengthened. This was not a tantrum or an overreaction. This was the beginning of something new, a life built on self-respect rather than the endless pursuit of approval. The first month in my new apartment passed in a blur of activity. January brought not only a new year but a completely new reality. The initial days were the hardest, adjusting to the small space, the unfamiliar noises of apartment living, and the emotional aftermath of the Christmas confrontation. But humans are remarkably adaptable creatures, and I soon established new routines. With my design equipment properly set up, I threw myself into freelance work with renewed focus. No longer distracted by household chores for Dad or the constant feeling of failing to meet his expectations, I found my productivity increasing dramatically. I reached out to previous clients, offering special rates for January projects, and updated my portfolio website with recent work. The strategy paid off. By mid-January, I had secured 3 new clients and expanded projects with 2 existing ones. My income was still below what I had earned at the tech company, but it was consistent enough to cover rent and basic expenses. Each invoice paid felt like a small victory, a piece of evidence contradicting Dad's dismissal of my work as not a real job. My apartment gradually transformed from a hasty refuge to a true home. I replaced the air mattress with a proper bed frame and mattress found through a neighborhood buy-nothing group. A local artist was upgrading her studio and gave me her old drafting table, a significant upgrade from the folding table I had been using. Each addition made the space more functional and personal. One unexpected benefit of apartment living was the community I discovered. My neighbor across the hall, Angela, was a retired art teacher in her 70s who took an immediate interest in my design work. She began inviting me for tea, offering both professional advice from her years in the creative field and practical suggestions for maximizing my small living space. "Have you considered a Murphy bed?" she asked one evening as we sat in her much more stylish apartment. "It would give you more floor space during the day for your work." Through Angela, I met other residents of the building, a diverse group ranging from students to retirees. There was something freeing about these new relationships. These people knew nothing about my family drama, my employment history, or my father's opinion of my choices. They took me at face value, judging me only on my present actions and character. My communication with family remained complicated. Sarah continued to text regularly, her messages a mixture of support and gentle pressure to reconcile with Dad. "I understand why you left, but he misses you," she wrote 3 weeks after Christmas. "He just does not know how to say it." I maintained polite but firm boundaries, sharing small details about my new life but refusing to discuss returning to Dad's house or pretending the hurtful words had never been spoken. The truth was I needed this clean break to discover who I could be without the weight of his disapproval constantly pressing down on me. Dad's approach varied from week to week. Sometimes he called with thinly veiled criticisms disguised as concern. "Are you eating properly in that tiny kitchen?" Other times he would ask for help with household matters he had never bothered to learn while I lived there. "Where did you store the furnace filters?" Occasionally, he would make awkward attempts at connection, mentioning a television show we used to watch together or asking about my job search, still not acknowledging my freelance work as legitimate employment. The breakthrough in my professional life came unexpectedly in early February. A small marketing agency that had hired me for occasional projects reached out with a larger opportunity. They had a client, a regional chain of specialty food stores, who needed a complete rebranding from logo to packaging to website. The budget was substantial, and they wanted me to lead the design aspects of the project. When the agency owner called to discuss details, she mentioned that they had recently received an offer to bring the project in-house with a full-time designer. "But we would rather work with you," she explained. "Your understanding of the brand and your aesthetic is exactly what this client needs." For a moment, I was tempted by the stability a full-time position would offer. It would certainly silence Dad's criticism. But I realized that I was enjoying the variety and independence of freelance work more than I had anticipated. "I appreciate the offer," I told her. "But I think I can serve you better as an independent contractor. It gives me the flexibility to focus completely on your project without other company responsibilities pulling me in different directions." She agreed, and we structured a 3-month contract that would provide steady income while allowing me to maintain my other clients. When I hung up the phone, I felt a surge of confidence. This was a significant professional victory, made sweeter by the fact that it validated the very path Dad had dismissed as not a real career. As February turned to March, my new life took on a comfortable rhythm. Mornings were for client calls and emails, afternoons for focused design work, evenings for personal projects or socializing with my new friends in the building. I joined a weekly movie night in the community room on the first floor and started attending a yoga class at the community center 3 blocks away. In late March, Lisa organized a small housewarming party for me, bringing together my old friends and new neighbors. As I looked around my tiny apartment filled with people who supported and respected me, I realized how much I had gained by leaving the toxic environment of Dad's house. Yes, the space was smaller and my budget tighter, but I had reclaimed something essential, my sense of self-worth. The party was in full swing when there was an unexpected knock at the door. When I opened it, Dad stood in the hallway, looking uncomfortable and out of place. He held a small gift bag and shifted nervously from foot to foot. "Can I come in?" he asked. The chatter in the apartment dimmed as people noticed who was at the door. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him enter. Dad looked around at the gathering, nodding awkwardly at Lisa, who gave him a decidedly cool reception. "I did not realize you were having a party," he said. "I can come back another time." Part of me wanted him to leave, to not intrude on this celebration of my independence, but another part recognized that his coming here at all represented effort on his part. "You can stay for a little while," I offered. "There is food and drinks in the kitchen area." He handed me the gift bag. "Just something for your new place," he said. Inside was a small framed photo of Mom and me from a beach vacation when I was about 10. It was one of my favorite pictures, one I had not taken when I left because it had always sat on the mantel in the living room. The gesture was small but significant, Dad giving me permission to take a piece of our shared past into my new future. "Thank you," I said sincerely. We did not talk much during his brief visit. He made stilted conversation with a few of my guests, ate a small plate of food, and left within an hour, but something had shifted. He had made the effort to come to my space, to see the life I was building without him, and had not immediately criticized it. After he left, Lisa pulled me aside. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded, surprised to find it was true. "Yeah, I am okay. He is trying in his way. Do not let him pull you back in," she warned. "I will not," I assured her. "But maybe we can build something new, something with better boundaries." As March ended, I realized that 3 months had passed since that disastrous Christmas dinner. In that short time, I had created a new home, strengthened my business, built new friendships, and begun the process of redefining my relationship with my family on my own terms. There was still healing to be done, still difficult conversations to have. But for the first time in years, I was moving forward rather than simply trying to stay afloat. 6 months after that life-changing Christmas dinner, summer sunshine streamed through the windows of my apartment. The space had evolved significantly. Since those first chaotic days, I had painted the walls a soft sage green, hung artwork, including some of my own designs, and arranged the furniture to maximize the small footprint. What once felt temporary now felt undeniably like home. My freelance business had flourished beyond my expectations. The food store rebranding project had been so successful that the marketing agency had brought me on for 3 additional major clients. I had hired a virtual assistant to help manage administrative tasks and was considering renting a small office space in a nearby co-working facility to separate my work life from my home. The financial stability I had achieved would have silenced Dad's criticisms about freelancing not being a real career, if I still cared about his approval. But that was perhaps the most significant change of all. I no longer measured my worth through his eyes. The journey to this place of inner peace had not been straightforward. In the months following my abrupt departure, I experienced waves of doubt, guilt, and anger. There were nights I questioned my decision, wondering if I had overreacted to a comment made in the heat of the moment. There were days I missed the familiarity of my childhood home despite the emotional tension that had permeated it. What helped most was therapy. 2 months after moving out, I found a therapist specializing in family dynamics who helped me understand the patterns that had defined my relationship with Dad for years. We explored the impact of Mom's death, the way grief had calcified Dad's natural rigidity, and my own role in maintaining unhealthy dynamics by constantly seeking approval I was never going to receive. I learned about emotional neglect, how parents can provide physically while withholding the emotional support children need. I came to understand that Dad's treatment of me reflected his own limitations, not my worth. Most importantly, I learned that while I could not change him, I could change how I responded to him. The books my therapist recommended became my guides: Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, Boundaries, and The Body Keeps the Score. Each offered insights that helped me process decades of accumulated hurt and establish healthier patterns for the future. I Also found unexpected support in a monthly meetup group for adult children healing from difficult parent relationships. Hearing others share stories with elements so similar to mine helped me feel less alone, less defective. In that safe space, I could acknowledge both the love I still felt for my father and the hurt he had caused without feeling disloyal or ungrateful. My relationship with Dad evolved slowly over those 6 months. We had progressed from tense phone calls to occasional coffee meetings at a neutral location. He never directly apologized for calling me a leech or for the years of dismissive treatment. That was not his way. But there were small acknowledgments, questions about my work that showed genuine interest rather than skepticism, a comment about how the house had never stayed clean after I left, a reluctant admission that perhaps the job market had indeed changed since his day. Sarah had been instrumental in facilitating this cautious reconnection. Once she understood that I was not simply having a tantrum but making a necessary break for my well-being, she became supportive while maintaining her relationship with Dad. She and Tom visited my apartment regularly, bringing their easygoing warmth and often food from my favorite restaurants. In late June, Sarah invited me to her birthday dinner. It would be the first time I had seen Dad in a social setting since Christmas. I accepted with some trepidation, establishing clear boundaries with Sarah beforehand. If he criticizes my career or living situation, I am leaving, I told her. I am not putting myself through that again. She assured me that she had talked with Dad extensively and he understood the terms of engagement. The dinner was at a nice restaurant downtown, neutral territory that helped keep the interaction civil. Dad was reserved but not hostile. He asked appropriate questions about my work and seemed genuinely impressed when I described the scope of my current projects. Have you considered hiring employees? He asked after I explained my growing client list. You could build this into a proper business. Coming from him, this was significant progress, an acknowledgement that my freelance work had potential beyond a stopgap measure. I explained my thinking about possibly taking on subcontractors for specific projects rather than employees. Smart, he nodded. Lower overhead that way. It was a small moment but meaningful, a professional exchange between adults rather than a parent criticizing a child's choices. As summer progressed, I found myself reflecting on all that had changed in half a year. The external transformations were obvious: new home, thriving business, expanded social circle. But the internal shift was far more profound. I had stopped seeking validation from someone who was constitutionally unable to provide it and learned instead to trust my own judgment and values. This did not mean complete healing or perfect relationships. Dad and I would likely never have the warm, emotionally open connection I sometimes envied in friends and their parents. Our interactions would probably always require careful navigation of sensitive topics and respect for boundaries. But we could have a relationship based on mutual respect rather than dependence and disappointment. In August, I reached a major milestone. I put a down payment on a small condominium. After months of careful saving and building a portfolio of consistent clients, I qualified for a mortgage on a one-bedroom unit in a converted warehouse building. The space needed renovation, but it had character, large windows perfect for natural light, and most importantly, it would be mine. When I signed the final paperwork, I felt a sense of accomplishment that needed no external validation. I had rebuilt my life from the ground up after that devastating Christmas dinner, creating something stronger and more authentic than what I had left behind. The weekend after closing on the condo, I invited family and friends for a small gathering to see the space before renovations began. Lisa and her boyfriend brought champagne. Angela from my apartment building brought a houseplant she had propagated. Sarah and Tom arrived with a gift card to a home improvement store. To my surprise, Dad came too, carrying a toolbox. Thought, "You might need some help with renovations," he said gruffly. "That kitchen is going to need work." It was his version of an olive branch, offering practical assistance rather than emotional support. A year ago, I would have been disappointed by the limitation. Now I could accept it for what it was, the best he could offer. As I showed him around the space, pointing out my plans for each area, he listened attentively. When we reached the main living area with its large windows and high ceilings, he paused. "You have done well, Frankie," he said quietly. "This is a good investment." The words were simple, but from him they were significant. Not effusive praise. Not an apology for the past, but an acknowledgement of my capability, something I had sought for years. "Thank you," I replied simply. Later, as my guests mingled and celebrated this new beginning, I found myself standing by the windows, looking out at the city skyline. My mind drifted back to that Christmas dinner, to the devastation I had felt. Hearing my father call me a leech, to the frantic packing and planning through the night, to the fear and uncertainty of those first days on my own. That painful moment had become a catalyst for transformation. By calling me a name that cut to my deepest insecurities, Dad had inadvertently forced me to prove to both of us that I was capable of standing on my own. The very thing meant to hurt me had ultimately freed me. The profound lesson I carried from this experience was that sometimes the family that hurts you teaches you how to build the family you deserve. Dad's rejection had pushed me to create a life aligned with my own values rather than his expectations. The friends who had supported me through this transition, the neighbors who had welcomed me into their community, the clients who valued my work, these people formed a chosen family based on mutual respect and genuine care. This did not erase the need for healing or the grief of having a parent who could not provide the emotional support I needed, but it offered a path forward that did not depend on changing someone who could not or would not change. As my first year of independence approached, I realized that the greatest gift of this difficult journey was the discovery of my own resilience. I had survived the worst day, being rejected by a parent in front of others, and had not only survived but thrived. That knowledge became a foundation I could build upon, a source of strength for whatever challenges lay ahead. I had learned that punishment is not love, that criticism is not guidance, and that independence is not abandonment. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes walking away is not giving up but moving forward. That Christmas dinner, with its cruel words and public humiliation, had felt like an ending. In truth, it was a beginning, the first painful step toward a life built on self-respect rather than the endless pursuit of approval I would never receive. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved for your own well-being? How did you find the strength to make that difficult choice?